What's going on guys, it's Unknown Player here, and today we'll be talking in more detail about this leaked expansion called Rise of Iron I made a video on last night. Got some really interesting info to talk about with this DLC and the kind of things we could expect for this expansion. So of course we've got this poster showing off what appears to be a leaked concept art of the new expansion. It's called Rise of Iron and it shows Lord Saladin looking pretty much as awesome as you can get with a fur coat surrounded by some wolves holding a flaming battle axe. Very awesome image, and Kotaku have two sources that say this is legit and it is confirmed to be a real image. Now Kotaku have had a very good track record with Destiny so far in the past year or so. They successfully predicted pretty much everything that's happened so far in Year 2 of Destiny, including the Eververse microtransactions, the DLC plan, and also Destiny 2 being delayed. And it appears those sources have come back and said this Rise of Iron is a real thing and it's going to be the full expansion coming later this year. So the first interesting thing they said was it's going to be likely Fallen themed, and this is again from those sources. Obviously looking at the image, we can see it is definitely set in old Russia in front of the wall, so you would assume it would be Fallen, and this article is also saying this is likely Fallen themed. It's looking very likely at the moment this expansion will be mainly themed around the Fallen. That's going to be the main enemy we're fighting in this expansion. Now if we look at the Fallen as a race right now in Destiny, they're pretty decimated, they're nearly destroyed, and pretty much not many exist right now in the system. The main group of Fallen right now that exist, and the most powerful ones, are the House of Kings. That is one house that's been very mysterious, and they're said to be the most powerful house that exists. So maybe this expansion will see us fighting them, and Lord Saladin will lead us to actually crusade against them. Obviously the Hive and the Taken have been completely beaten to death. I think we're all sick of the Hive by now, so I don't think anything is going to be involving with those. The Vex are also very interesting. We haven't had much of those since Vanilla, and of course the Vault of Glass. The Fallen was seen quite a lot in the Vanilla and just general Destiny, and also of course the House of Wolves and the Prison of Elders, which got recently. So they have been kind of seen quite a lot, and it seems like they're a persistent enemy of Destiny, so I wouldn't really expect them to be the main theme. And obviously the Cabal are the least seen and least touched enemy we've gotten so far. If you ask almost anyone what the next expansion would be, they'd probably all say Cabal. So the fact that this can be Fallen is quite surprising, but right now all signs seem to definitely point towards Rise of Iron being mainly Fallen themed. Now the next bit of info is very interesting, and they said that this expansion is going to be larger than both of the Year 1 DLCs. So that of course includes the House of Wolves and the Dark Below, and they're saying that this is going to be bigger than them, which basically points towards, I'm guessing, around the size of the Taken King. We did hear from Bungie that this would be a large expansion, and also Activision in the earnings call, this is going to be a large expansion. That's the main way that the Taken King was described, so that was what I was thinking in my head. This article is also saying this can be bigger than both of the DLCs, so I'm not sure whether it's actually going to be the size of Taken King. I'm feeling like it may be somewhere in between the Taken King and those Year 1 DLCs like the House of Wolves and the Dark Below, but of course this is going to be including a raid, which brings me to my next point. They say this can be based loosely on the raid that was cut from the House of Wolves. So any of you that have been around with Destiny for a very long time might remember when the House of Wolves and the Dark Below first got leaked, and this showed this image where someone was able to go around the reef and actually preview some of the activities that weren't in the game yet, and it was basically the DLCs that turned out to be true. Now one thing when he went to the reef showed an activity called Reef Raid. Now we all assumed that this would be the House of Wolves raid, it did say that as well. Of course later we did get the Prison of Elders, so the raid did not make it into the House of Wolves, and not a lot of people knew what happened, whether Reef Raid was just a placeholder for the Prison of Elders and this is actually what became of it, or whether the Reef Raid was cut entirely and put somewhere else. Now I personally still believe this Reef Raid exists, and I for the longest time have always thought this is a real thing, simply because I don't think someone at Bungie would type out the words Reef Raid if it did not exist. I don't see it as a placeholder. I don't see any point in why they would actually create an activity and put it in here called Reef Raid if there wasn't a Reef Raid that was actually created. So I feel like there was one that was either half made or maybe wasn't ready, or maybe they decided to put it somewhere else, but I've always thought the Reef Raid still does exist. I've been wondering what they're going to do with it, but according to Kotaku, this Reef Raid is going to be seeing its way into the fall expansion. They did say it's going to be loosely based off of this cut raid, so it's of course not going to be identical. The story is going to be drastically different because this DLC was probably not made at the same time. So there's going to be a lot of story differences, but it's probably going to have that core raid as its element, but instead of being a part of the House of Wolves, it's now part of the Rise of Iron. So if this Reef Raid is actually making its way into this expansion, we could also see ourselves going to the reef for this raid. With that image, it does make us think of the Earth, but possibly part of it will take place on the reef or elsewhere, and the Fallen definitely does have a lot of business in the reef, so possibly that is where we're going as well for the raid, and perhaps it does still take place on the reef. I personally would love to see a raid on either Earth or the reef. I think they're both amazing locations. I think the Earth is probably my favorite planet in Destiny, and the Fallen are definitely my favorite race in Destiny, so I would love a Fallen raid on Earth. I think that would be amazing. Now something else pretty interesting that Kotaku mentioned is this Rise of Iron expansion was planned at one point to release in April, so this actually was going to be the April update, or of course what they had planned to release then, but they later changed it and decided to release it in the fall. Of course we did end up getting the April update, which is much smaller in content. As we've seen before, Bungie regularly changed their plans on what they're going to do with releases of DLCs, so that seems to be an example of that. Now, one final bit of info we got from Kotaku is they said about Destiny 2 and how it's been recently rebooted. I think they mean how earlier this year it was delayed to 2017 and kind of put under new development with the new CEO of Bungie, and now Luke Smith is in charge of Destiny 2 and the project development, so he's going to be doing that the same way he did for the Taken King, which is pretty interesting. So a load of very interesting developments from Kotaku. Of course, I'll link the article in the description if you want to read it yourself. I'm really interested to know what this actual raid is going to be and how it's going to take place, whether it's going to be on Earth or the Reef. I'm thinking that instead of just adding new waypoints to existing Earth map we have in the Cosmodrome, I'm thinking possibly this will be a new area together, simply because the image was very snowy and the Cosmodrome isn't like that very often. So I'm thinking maybe this will be a new area in Old Russia. You go into Earth in Old Russia, and you got either the Cosmodrome or this new area where this one takes place. So a lot of speculation. My mind is just buzzing with all the possibilities that this could entail. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Drop a like rating on the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.